The first sign that something was wrong was not the number on the screen. It was my daughter's face. Claire Whitmore was standing at the far end of the conference table with her arms folded loosely across her chest. She had been called into the meeting less than 20 minutes earlier, with no explanation beyond a message from my assistant asking her to come upstairs immediately. She looked tired, but not frightened. Mostly, she looked disappointed. Behind me, a financial dashboard showed that $1.8 million had been transferred out of Whitmore Systems over a period of 11 weeks. The payments had been divided among 19 invoices submitted by a technology consulting firm called Northbridge Advisory. Every invoice had passed through our normal approval process. Every payment had been authorized by senior management. The problem was that Northbridge had not performed most of the work it billed us for. Worse, the access records showed that the supporting documents had been uploaded and altered using Claire's administrative credentials. I had spent 31 years building Whitmore Systems from a rented office above a hardware store into a supply chain software company employing more than 600 people. We designed inventory and logistics platforms for regional manufacturers, hospital networks, and food distributors. Our clients trusted us with information that could shut down warehouses or delay medical shipments if it fell into the wrong hands. Claire had worked for the company for nearly 9 years. She was our vice president of systems integrity, responsible for internal security, access controls, and regulatory compliance. She was also my daughter. At 42, she was the more capable of my 2 children. I had never said that aloud, especially not in front of her younger brother, but everyone who worked closely with them knew it. Claire was methodical, blunt, and almost impossible to charm. She questioned every shortcut and documented every decision. People sometimes complained that she made projects harder than necessary. Then something went wrong, and the records she had insisted on keeping usually saved us. My son Daniel was different. He was warm, persuasive, and good in a room. Clients liked him. Employees wanted his approval. He had joined the company 6 years after Claire and risen quickly, partly because of his talent and partly, I had to admit, because I had wanted him beside me. Daniel now served as Chief Operating Officer. Sitting next to him that morning was Vanessa Mercer, our Chief Transformation Officer, and Daniel's fiancée. Vanessa had joined Whitmore Systems 2 years earlier after working for a national consulting firm. She was polished, without seeming rehearsed, ambitious, without appearing impatient. She had helped us renegotiate 2 major contracts and had led a restructuring that increased our operating margin. The board respected her. Daniel adored her. I had trusted her. Our initial review found no evidence that anyone else used Claire's account, Vanessa said. Her voice was calm, almost sympathetic. The files were modified from an authenticated session connected to the corporate network. The session used Claire's credentials, her security token, and an administrative certificate assigned to her department. Claire looked at her. An administrative certificate assigned to my department is not the same thing as my personal security key. Vanessa did not react. The certificate was issued under your authority. 6 people had permission to deploy it, and you supervised all 6. Claire turned to me. Have you brought in an outside forensic team? We have our internal security report, I said. That wasn't my question. The room became uncomfortable. Our general counsel, Martin Becker, glanced down at the folder in front of him. Daniel stared at the screen. I had convened the meeting after receiving an urgent report from Vanessa and our finance department. They told me that a pending client audit could expose the false invoices within days. They warned that if we did not act immediately, the company might appear to be protecting a senior executive because she was related to me. That possibility had frightened me more than I wanted to admit. For years, I had been careful not to give Claire obvious favors. I criticized her more sharply than other executives and required her to justify decisions that I would have accepted from someone else. I told myself I was protecting her credibility. In reality, I had often made her pay for being my daughter. Martin cleared his throat. Claire, this is not a criminal proceeding. The company has to make an employment decision based on the information currently available. Then make one after a competent investigation. The board's risk committee has been briefed, Vanessa said. Claire looked at Daniel. Did you read the underlying logs? Daniel finally met her eyes. I reviewed the summary. The summary Vanessa prepared? It was prepared by the response team. A team reporting to her. Daniel's jaw tightened. Claire, the documents were changed through your division. The audit trail leads back to your credentials. What exactly are we supposed to think? That someone designed it to lead there. No one answered. Claire looked at me again. There was no panic in her expression, no desperate appeal. That should have stopped me. My daughter had spent her career anticipating problems before anyone else noticed them. She was telling me the evidence was too convenient, and I knew enough about systems to understand what she meant. But I also knew that the board was waiting for a decision. Our largest client was conducting a compliance review. Rumors were already circulating among senior staff. Every hour of delay increased the chance that someone would accuse me of protecting my family. I chose the company. Or at least that was what I told myself. Effective immediately, you're being placed on administrative leave, I said. Your system access will be suspended while the company completes its review. Claire's expression barely changed. Martin slid a letter across the table. The document stated that she was prohibited from entering company property or contacting employees about the investigation. It required her to return all devices and identification cards. Claire read the first page but did not sign the acknowledgement. You've already decided what happened, she said. We're continuing the investigation. No, you're continuing the paperwork. I felt several people watching me. Claire, I said, this is not personal. She gave a quiet, humorless laugh. You called me into a room with my brother, his fiancée, the general counsel, and 3 board members. You showed me a report I wasn't allowed to examine. Then you removed me from the company without asking the one question that mattered. What question? Who benefits if I'm gone? Daniel shifted in his chair. That's enough. Claire turned toward him. You approved Northbridge, didn't you? His face changed just slightly. Vanessa answered for him. Northbridge was approved through the standard vendor process. I asked Daniel. I signed the engagement, he said, based on recommendations from finance and transformation. Did you verify who owned it? Procurement did. Claire nodded slowly as though a missing piece had just fallen into place. Then she removed her company badge and set it on the table. I'll return the laptop through my attorney, she said. I won't surrender it to anyone involved in this review unless a forensic image is made in the presence of an independent examiner. Martin began to object, but I raised a hand. That's acceptable. Claire looked at me for another moment. When you finally decide to investigate instead of defend yourself, she said, start with the service account created for the Meridian migration. Check who requested that its expiration date be extended. Then she walked out. No one stood behind her. No one made a speech. The door closed and the meeting continued because that was what meetings did. We discussed client notifications, document preservation, insurance coverage, and what language to use if the matter became public. But I heard very little of it. I kept thinking about the way Claire had looked at Daniel when she asked about Northbridge. Not angry, certain. That afternoon, I read the internal report from beginning to end. It had been prepared in less than 48 hours by our own incident response team. The findings appeared straightforward. An administrative service account called Meridian Sync had been used to alter vendor records, replace supporting documents, and bypass a secondary review requirement. The account was managed by Claire's division. Its authentication certificate had been generated while she was logged into the system. The report repeatedly described the activity as originating from systems under Ms. Whitmore's control. That phrase bothered me. Control was not the same as use. I turned to the section covering the Meridian migration. 9 months earlier, we had moved several internal applications to a new cloud platform. The service account was supposed to expire after the migration ended. According to the report, Claire had approved a 90-day extension because some historical records still had to be transferred. There was no mention of any extension after that. I opened the document appendix. The request contained Claire's original approval, followed by a second extension 6 weeks later. The second request had been authorized by Daniel. The business justification read, "Continued access required for transformation analytics and vendor integration." The requester was Vanessa Mercer. I called Martin Becker into my office. Why wasn't this in the executive summary? He adjusted his glasses. The account still fell under systems integrity. That isn't what I asked. The response team considered Daniel's authorization administrative. The account remained within Claire's technical environment. Who told the team to describe it that way? Martin hesitated. Vanessa coordinated the initial review because the issue involved both finance and operations. She coordinated an investigation into invoices from a vendor she helped engage. She disclosed her involvement in the transformation program. That is not the same as disclosing a conflict. Martin leaned back. Margaret, I understand your concern, but we should be careful not to reverse direction simply because Claire challenged the process. I'm not reversing anything. I'm asking why the person who brought us the accusation was also allowed to define the evidence. He had no good answer. That evening, I called the chair of our board's audit committee, a retired federal judge named Helen Russo. I told her the internal review had not been sufficiently independent, and that I wanted outside counsel and a digital forensics firm appointed by the board, not by management. Helen was quiet for a moment. Are you asking because you believe the finding is wrong? She said. Or because you regret what happened to your daughter? Both may be true. That answer is more useful than pretending otherwise. By 8 the next morning, the board had retained outside counsel. They hired a forensic firm from Chicago and instructed management not to alter, delete, or access relevant records except through the investigators. Daniel, Vanessa, Martin, Claire, and I received formal preservation notices. We did not announce the new investigation to the rest of the company. For the next week, I went to work and behaved as normally as I could. Daniel attended operating meetings. Vanessa presented a cost reduction plan. The board requested documents without explaining why. Forensic examiners quietly collected server images, cloud access records, employee laptops, mobile device logs, and email archives. I did not conduct my own searches. I did not question employees in hallways or secretly follow anyone. That might have made for a satisfying confrontation, but it would also have contaminated the investigation and given any competent defense attorney a reason to challenge the findings. So I waited. Waiting was harder than I expected. At home, I found myself walking past photographs I had stopped noticing years earlier. Claire at 12, holding a science fair ribbon. Daniel at 15, grinning beside his first car. The three of us on a beach in Maine 2 summers after their father died. I had been 51 when cancer took Stephen. Claire was 24 and already working for another technology company. Daniel was finishing college. After the funeral, I threw myself into Whitmore Systems because it was the one thing I still knew how to control. Claire came home a year later to help stabilize a security program that had nearly failed an audit. She accepted a lower salary than she had been earning in Boston. She rebuilt the department, hired experienced staff, and stayed through 3 difficult expansions. I rarely thanked her. Daniel joined later after working in sales for a medical device company. He had natural ability, but he also had my name, my protection, and a path that had been cleared for him before he arrived. I had told myself that both children earned their positions. Only one of them had been required to prove it every day. 9 days after Claire was placed on leave, Helen Russo and the outside attorneys met me in a small conference room away from the executive floor. The lead investigator, Aaron Patel, placed a timeline on the table. "We have not completed our work," he said, "but we can tell you that the initial conclusion regarding Ms. Whitmore is not supported by the full access data." I felt something drop inside my chest. Aaron explained that the Meridian Sync account had been used through a virtual server maintained by Northbridge Advisory. Because the server connected through our approved cloud environment, the activity appeared to originate inside Whitmore systems. The internal report had relied primarily on application logs, which showed what credentials had been used, but not the full path of the connection. The cloud provider's network records told a different story. "The certificate associated with Ms. Whitmore's division was copied to the Northbridge server during a troubleshooting session 4 months ago," Aaron said. "That transfer was authorized under an emergency support request." "Who approved it?" "Daniel Whitmore." I looked toward Helen. She did not soften her expression. Aaron continued. "The request was submitted by Vanessa Mercer. The stated purpose was to allow Northbridge engineers to diagnose synchronization failures. There is no evidence that Claire initiated or approved the transfer." "Could she have known about it?" "She received an automated notification, but it was routed into an archived project mailbox. We found no evidence she opened it." My mouth had gone dry. "What about the session showing she was logged in when the certificate was created?" "The certificate was created during the original migration. That part is legitimate. The later activity reused a copy of it. The internal report treated certificate ownership as proof of user activity. It isn't." I thought about Claire, asking whether we had hired an independent examiner. She had understood the flaw within minutes. I had not allowed her to explain it. Aaron pushed another document toward me. Northbridge Advisory had been formed 14 months earlier in Delaware. Its public records listed a registered agent and provided little useful ownership information. The investigators traced its bank account through payment instructions and tax documentation. The beneficial owner was a holding company controlled by Vanessa's former business partner, Eric Mercer, her older brother. "Did she disclose that relationship?" I asked. "We have found no disclosure," Helen said. "The vendor questionnaire states that no Whitmore employee or immediate family member had a financial interest in Northbridge." "Who signed the questionnaire?" "Daniel." I stared at the page. His signature was unmistakable. "Did he know?" "We don't know yet," Aaron said. "His email suggests Vanessa sent the form to him with instructions to approve it quickly, because a deployment deadline was at risk. We also found messages in which he asked whether legal had reviewed the relationship. She told him it had been cleared." "Had it?" "No." That should have comforted me. It meant Daniel might have been deceived. Then Aaron opened another file. 3 months after Northbridge began receiving payments, Daniel had been warned by a procurement manager that the invoices lacked staffing records and project deliverables. Daniel forwarded the warning to Vanessa. Her response read, "I'm handling it. We cannot slow down the integration over paperwork." Daniel replied, "Understood. I'll tell them to release the invoices." A later message was worse. The procurement manager raised the issue again and recommended suspending payments. Daniel wrote privately to Vanessa, "I need to know there isn't anything here that can come back on us." Vanessa answered, "There isn't, as long as everyone follows the process we established." Daniel approved 4 more invoices after that exchange. He may not have known the full scheme, but he knew enough to be worried. Instead of stopping, he had chosen not to ask another question. Just as I had. Outside counsel recommended placing Daniel and Vanessa on paid administrative leave while the investigation continued. The board approved the recommendation that afternoon. I asked to speak to Daniel before the notices were delivered. Helen refused. You are the CEO, but you are also his mother and a potential witness, she said. You cannot manage this as a family conversation. She was right. At 4:15, Daniel and Vanessa were escorted separately to conference rooms and given letters by outside counsel. Their system access was disabled while they were in the meetings. Company devices were collected. They were instructed not to contact employees about the investigation. Daniel called me 7 times that evening. I did not answer until the board's attorney confirmed that I was permitted to speak with him, provided we did not discuss evidence or coordinate accounts. When I finally picked up, he sounded younger than 40. Mom, what is happening? You've been placed on leave, pending an independent investigation. I know what the letter says. I'm asking why. You need to speak with your attorney. Vanessa says Claire manipulated the investigators. Do not discuss the investigation with Vanessa. He went quiet. You think I did this? I think you signed documents you did not verify and approved payments after people warned you there was a problem. I trusted the people working for me. That was your responsibility, Daniel. She told me legal had cleared Northbridge. Did you ask legal? Silence. She said the delays were putting the client contract at risk, he said. Every time I questioned her, she had an explanation. And when procurement questioned the invoices? I thought they were being overly cautious. You told Vanessa you were worried it could come back on you. That doesn't mean I knew she was stealing. No. It means you knew something was wrong and decided not to find out what it was. His breathing became uneven. You're choosing Claire again. The accusation stunned me, partly because it was so far from the truth. I did not choose Claire, I said. That is how we got here. He ended the call. I reached out to Claire through her attorney the following morning. She agreed to meet me at a coffee shop in Evanston, far from the office and the neighborhood where we both lived. She arrived exactly on time and sat across from me without taking off her coat. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. The apology I had rehearsed sounded inadequate before I said it. I was wrong. Claire looked toward the window. Yes. I let an internal report stand in for an investigation. Yes. I was more concerned about appearing impartial than I was about being fair. Her eyes returned to me. That's closer. I wrapped both hands around my coffee, though I had no intention of drinking it. I'm sorry. She was quiet for a long time. I believe you're sorry, she said. But I don't know what you expect me to do with that. Nothing. Then why are we here? Because you deserve to hear it without a lawyer, a board member, or a company representative in the room. She studied my face as though deciding whether that answer was honest. I kept waiting for you to ask me what happened, she said. Not because I thought you should believe me automatically. I knew you couldn't do that. I expected you to treat me the way you would treat any executive whose career mattered to you. I thought immediate action proved I wasn't protecting you. You weren't protecting the company. You were protecting yourself from criticism. There was no cruelty in her voice. She did not need any. I know. No, Mom, I don't think you do. You've spent years making me demonstrate that I wasn't getting special treatment. Daniel never had to do that. When he made mistakes, you called them growing pains. When I questioned decisions, you called me difficult. Then the first time someone built a convincing case against me, you were almost relieved to show everyone you could punish your own daughter. I wanted to defend myself. That instinct told me she was right. What will you do now? I asked. I've been talking to 2 former clients about starting a risk consulting firm. You should. Her expression hardened. I'm not asking for your approval. I know. And I'm not returning to Whitmore. I know that too. For the first time, Some of the tension left her shoulders. I told her the board would receive a formal report clearing her of wrongdoing. The company would restore her salary and benefits for the period of leave, pay the severance required under her contract, reimburse her legal expenses, and issue a correction to anyone who had been informed that she was responsible. "That's the company's obligation," she said. "Yes." "It isn't forgiveness." "No." We left separately. The full investigation took another 4 months. Northbridge had submitted approximately $2.3 million in fraudulent and inflated invoices. Some described work that had never occurred. Others billed legitimate services at 3 or 4 times the agreed rate. Nearly $600,000 had been transferred from Northbridge to accounts controlled by Vanessa through a separate property management company. The digital evidence showed that Vanessa had used the copied Meridian Sync certificate to replace invoice attachments and alter approval records. She had not needed Claire's password. She only needed a credential associated with Claire's department and a connection path that would make the activity appear internal. When a finance analyst noticed inconsistencies, Vanessa directed the internal response team to focus on application logs rather than cloud network records. She did not fabricate every fact in the report. She selected the facts that produced the conclusion she wanted. That distinction mattered legally. It also explained why I had believed her. Daniel's involvement was more complicated. Investigators found no evidence that he received stolen money or knew Vanessa had used Claire's certificate. But he had bypassed vendor review controls, falsely certified that conflicts had been checked, and approved invoices after receiving multiple warnings. He had also deleted several text messages after learning that the board had retained outside counsel. The messages were recovered from a synchronized tablet. Deleting them transformed his situation. What might have remained a case of reckless management became potential obstruction. The board terminated Vanessa for cause and referred the findings to federal authorities and our insurance carrier. Daniel resigned before the board voted on his dismissal. I removed myself from all employment decisions involving him. There were no dramatic arrests in the office. No agents marched through the lobby while employees watched. 8 months later, Vanessa was indicted on charges involving wire fraud, access device fraud, and conspiracy. She initially denied everything. After her brother agreed to cooperate with prosecutors, she entered a guilty plea. Daniel was charged separately with obstruction and making a false statement during the investigation. His attorney negotiated a plea to 1 count of obstruction. The judge considered his lack of criminal history and the fact that he had not shared in the stolen funds. He received 6 months in a federal halfway house, followed by home confinement and probation. I attended the sentencing, but did not speak on his behalf. That decision cost me whatever remained of our easy relationship. He believed a mother should have stood before the judge and described the son she knew. Perhaps he was right. But the company's employees, shareholders, and clients had also trusted my family. I could not ask a court to treat his choices as less serious because I had failed to hold him accountable sooner. After his release, Daniel moved to Colorado and took a sales job with a small industrial supplier. We spoke every few weeks. Our conversations were polite and careful. He never mentioned Vanessa. I never asked. Claire launched her firm with 2 former colleagues. Within a year, they had 12 employees and contracts with 3 healthcare companies. I learned about her progress through public announcements and occasional comments from people who knew us both. I did not invest in the firm. I did not refer clients or use my name to open doors for her. Offering help would have made me feel generous, but it would also have allowed me to place myself back into a life she was building without me. Whitmore Systems survived. We recovered part of the money through insurance and civil claims. We replaced our general counsel, reorganized the audit function, and prohibited executives from supervising investigations involving departments under their control. The board separated the roles of chief executive and chair. At my recommendation, Helen Russo became board chair. I remained CEO for another 18 months, long enough to complete the transition to an outside successor. Then I retired from the company I had spent more than half my life building. On my final day, employees gathered in the cafeteria. There were speeches, photographs, and a video containing images from the company's early years. People thanked me for jobs, opportunities, and decisions I barely remembered making. Claire did not attend. Daniel did not either. That evening, after everyone had gone, I returned to my office one last time. Most of the shelves were empty. The framed awards had been packed. On the desk sat the pen I had used the morning Claire was placed on leave. For years, I had believed leadership meant making difficult decisions quickly and living with the consequences. That belief had helped me build a company. It had also given me an excuse to confuse decisiveness with judgment. The choice that damaged my family had taken less than an hour. Correcting the company record took months. Repairing the relationship with my daughter would take longer, if she ever allowed it. I picked up the pen and put it in my purse. 6 weeks after my retirement, Claire called. She did not invite me to dinner or tell me she had forgiven me. She said her firm was holding an open house in its new office and that I could come if I wanted to. The invitation was cautious enough that I understood what it cost her. Her office occupied the second floor of a renovated brick building near the river. It was smaller than the place where I had started Whitmore Systems, but brighter. Employees stood near folding tables eating sandwiches and talking over one another. Whiteboards covered 2 walls. Half-assembled desks waited in a corner. Claire was speaking with a client when I arrived. She saw me, paused, and gave a small nod. I stayed near the back until she finished. "You came," she said. "You invited me." "I wasn't sure you would." "I wasn't sure I should." That almost made her smile. She showed me the office. She introduced me to her employees as Margaret, not as her mother and not as the founder of Whitmore Systems. I understood the choice and was grateful for it. Near the end of the tour, we stopped beside a glass conference room overlooking the river. "This is where we review incident findings," she said. "No one who manages the affected department is allowed to lead the investigation." That's a good policy. I learned it from a terrible example. I suppose you did. For a moment, we stood together without speaking. Then Claire handed me a paper cup of coffee. It was not forgiveness. It was not a return to the family we had been. It was coffee in an unfinished office on a Thursday afternoon. It was 10 minutes of conversation that did not end in anger. It was the smallest possible opening, offered by the person I had failed when she needed me to slow down and listen. This time, I did not try to turn it into more than it was. I took the cup, and I stayed.